That's okay there?
It looks great.
Great stuff. Okay, so hello everyone that's part of the conversation. On a more lighter topic, I thought it would be good to share some perspective just around the topic of the powerness of mindfulness through minimalism, because I feel that we are all in an epidemic and all experiencing at the same time, universally, different but the same emotions. And I feel like, minimalism has the ability to help the way we perceive a lot of these emotions and the way in which we view the current circumstance. So just to kind of go into it, I'm Leonard Sekyonda. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a speaker. And what I'll be going through today is how, I feel mindfulness and the study of Stoicism has the ability to really help people to kind of get a bit more perspective and a bit more balance in the uncertainty of what we have happening right now. I want to open with this quote, which I think is really moving for the times. And it starts with, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them." Now, what I find very powerful about this quote, especially for the time in which we're in right now, many people are experiencing multiple versions of what they think is good or bad about the circumstance. And I love the openness of this quote because it really provides a perspective on the way in which we inherit these emotions and the way in which we interpret our circumstance, or the way things roll out organically or out of our control. This brings me to a point and a philosophy that I really want to go into today. You're going to need to bear with me briefly just to kind of get to understand a bit more about how this philosophy can be applied. And I'm aware that this is a very emotional and physically testing time. However, I want to remind you that this is a period in which we can all still grow and learn. I feel like Stoicism is a philosophy that really gripped me, and I came into understanding more and more about it over the past couple of years, and just kind of digging into the practice of it, because I think a lot of the time when we lose control, we're very easy to take out that external perspective on ourselves. And Stoicism really practices something to me that provides a bit more balance in the state of mind. Now, Stoicism derives from the word stoic, which means someone who remains calm under pressure and avoids emotional exchange. The Stoics believe that everything around us is connected to cause and effect. And they mean, in this sense, that everything is happening exactly as it should. The Stoics deal with the world as it is while pursuing self-improvement. One of the key things about the Stoicism and the belief is that there are 4 cardinal virtues that the Stoics tend to live by. And these are prudence, temperance, justice, and fortitude. And I really wanted to dive into these principles because I feel there is a lot we can take, especially for the time we're in, and apply directly just to our perspective, which, as I said, perspective is what carries us through. I want to start with the first point, which is prudence, which really tackles the concept of wisdom. And what they're basically saying is wisdom is the ability to navigate complex situations in a logical and informed and calm manner. The second virtue they touch on is temperance, and that is the exercise of self-restraint and moderation in all aspects of life. And then the third, is justice. Treat others with fairness, even when they have done wrong to you. And the fourth is courage. Face daily challenges with clarity and integrity. Now, one of the most famous Stoic writers was actually a Roman emperor, and he reigned power for over 19 years, a guy by the name of Marcus Aurelius. And he's really known for winning 2 major wars, while dealing with the loss of many of his children. And his journal notes, which he wrote during his period of this emotion, were actually turned into a book. And his journal would then go on to guide the likes of someone like Nelson Mandela, who was actually incarcerated for over 27 years, and used the book to then go on to not only get through that incarceration, but then to lead with power. And my main point today, just as a kind of reminder for perspective, because I don't feel like information is always an exchange of long conversations. I think it's an exchange of a spark. And through these cardinal virtues, I truly believe that adopting and investigating and creating the ability to be aware of the flow of life and the fact that life is actually happening for you and not against you can really enable and ease a lot of the anxieties and the pressures that we can find within ourselves based on our expectations and what we view as happening for us or not happening for us. A lot of the Stoicism philosophers also went on to really apply a number of exercises that they would do, from clearing their living rooms and making sure the living areas were clear, as well as living a more refined life on constantly focusing on personal development. And successful people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs were known to follow some of these practices. To be precise, I believe Steve Jobs actually had no TV in his living room and literally had one sofa, because he was practicing minimalism in a form of trying to create the space to get the ideas in order to innovate. And a lot of creatives tend to draw to minimalism in order to create that clarity for transition of thought. And my message today is simple. It's not long, it's not complicated. And it is that life is happening for you and not against you. Look into, study, and embrace the moments that we are currently experiencing as a moment to understand yourself more, as well as to develop and improve self. I'm Leonard Sekyonda, and this was my reminder for today. I don't know what's happened here.
We're here.
Hello?
Yes, we're here, Leonard. Or I'm
Yes.
here.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to notify that.
I wasn't sure whether you were regrouping or.
No, sorry, I was just trying, because my whole screen changed. I was just trying to notify you that it was just. I mean, my talk today was more about just being a spark and just a reminder for the circumstance that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I did a presentation earlier at 3 or 4, I don't know what time it was. It was also about how could you use this period, I called it what if, to stimulate, even though in this period we are in now, which I refer to a bit as a vortex, try and make the best out of it, right? How can you use this period to be creative and try and see opportunity? And so I think you're very much, I mean, you approach it from a Stoicism point of view, but yeah, I find it very powerful. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I think that a lot of the time, it's the external expectation that we apply internally that enables or creates that frustration or that element of feeling that we have to be the ones to take the blame of things that we can't control. And I like the way in which the philosophy of Stoicism removes that ownership and actually focuses more on flow and acceptance, because a lot of us are, trying to speed up or accelerate back to the way things used to be, not knowing whether they ever will go back there You know, we could actually be going into a whole new world, a whole new change.
Yeah.
And I think now more than ever, it's our job to embrace whatever it is that is coming and let go of what we expect or what we want to go back to.
But how do you transfer this knowledge really to people? I think that I find it always the challenge, you know, how to bring it alive in other people, how to
Mm.
create awareness, truth, enthusiasm for it so that people believe in it. Because I have a feeling I'm fully with you. And I've been leading companies, and I'm in hotel business. So I'm in the service industry, I'm a social entrepreneur, I'm a hotelier.
Mm.
Um, but um, yeah, I just want to see also in the culture overall. I think it's the only way to survive, really. But are you saying with the one slide, um, the third one, I think it was, where we were just talking about, if you could go on that. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this, for example, how do you transmit this to a wider audience that you create this awareness, you know, if people don't always have books, or how do you trigger this paradigm shift, you know, where we are in? How do you trigger,
Yes.
how do you
But,
turn that?
but, because a lot of it stems down to self-love, and a lot of us are preoccupied on a destination of improvement, but outside of ourselves. And I feel like my main goal, even as a speaker, as an author, is to awaken people to their inner value and their inner power. And I think we apply so much power to everything outside. You know, we apply it to the next thing we're going to get, or the next deal we're going to have, or the next um, outcome that's going to happen, and we kind of neglect who we've become or who we are. And I think one of the main points about the way in which we judge outside is reflected to how we judge inside. And a lot of people have a problem with embracing the silence of who they are, because it's easier to focus on who we're trying to become. It's easier to focus on who we want to be. But when you are in circumstances like this, where people are forced to actually look in the mirror and see and address, you know, a lot of the time it comes from pain. Us being occupied is a reaction to not wanting to address what it is that goes on inside. Yes, part of it is generated and geared towards growth, but a lot of it is perpetuated to being occupied. And my message a lot of the time is to start to enable people to actually listen and feel out how they feel, because we all have unique circumstances, we all have different stories, but it's the unique events happen individually within our stories that we either ignore and put to the back of our mind, um, that still exist. I did a course on NLP, and it was talking about neural memory and how a lot of our patterns and thoughts are stem from the age of 5 and 7 years old, and memory cells never actually go; they just kind of move around within our neural system, and it creates a subjective way that we approach the world, and unconsciously we make decisions based off things that have affected us in the past, and we use those things as driving force to kind of consistently keep going. And my message all the time is to try to identify some of these things that have us uneasy with being still, or have us uneasy with silence, or have us uneasy with just being with self. And I think that is a challenging. I think that's more challenging than changing the perspective. Um, Telling somebody to 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 be at one with self. You know, not the idea of who we want to be, but who we actually are. And I feel like through that self acceptance, growth happens both outside and also inside. And we only realize how uncomfortable it is until we try it. And I think this is the first time where it's out of our control whether we want to or don't want to stay home and stay alone or stay in our houses. And most people, initially, including myself, have found it, you know, the way to get through it is to be optimistic about what we're going to have after it, or what we can do during it. But very few of us are trying to identify or feel out how we feel and what has happened before. So I feel like it's really a matter of self-reflection in order to simplify, you know, how we react moving forward in just the day-to-day rat race of things coming back into fruition. I don't think unlocking solves our individual personal emotional needs. I think it gets us back to financial, you know, possibility. It gets us back to, you know, integration of communication with other people, but it doesn't solve that same thing that we had before it. And I think learning that that practice of even things such as meditation enable people to really understand how occupied our minds are.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ikigai, the Japanese concept.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Ikigai, and that's what I kind of brought up in my presentation, which allows you, it's kind of a simple format with a few questions, and kind of asks you to think thoroughly about yourself and ask yourself very critical questions as to what do you love in life, what are you good at, what are your strengths, how are you going to make money also, and then also the fourth part of it is really how does this sit towards what the world needs right now. And I think that fairly simple questions really on a one pager, that's really what it is. It kind of, and if you're not afraid to ask yourself difficult questions, you know, do you really love this or that person, or you know, do you want to continue that road, or is it time to make a shift? I think to address all that right now in this period, I think is very appropriate. You know,
Yes.
I find very appropriate right now to really capitalize on it. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, and that sounds really, yeah, because I mean, the fact that it is a list of questions, because like, and sometimes we need that guidance of questions to propel that thought. But I do also believe that some of us know what we're running from. I think we occupy ourselves
Sure.
in order to find that thought. We
Right.
know it exists. We know, you know, we know the feeling.
Yeah.
And a lot of it stems from the past. And no matter how focused or driven we are on the future, I mean, for me personally, I'll give you an example. My dad passed away when I was 8 years old, and my understanding of death at that age was still very foreign. It was still very, you know, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I kind of just proceeded to be occupied. I played football. I went on to do music. I, you know, found business and just always, you know, focused my energy on business. But I never really addressed the loss. I never really addressed how I felt about it. In fact, I didn't want people to engage with me about it because it would kind of reignite the feelings. So I suffered more with people's reaction to me saying my dad's passed away than the actual reality of him passing away. So I'd either avoid expressing or sharing that to people just because I didn't want someone to say, oh, I didn't want the I couldn't handle it. So I'd avoid that. And then as time went on and I got older, I really, even as I became more successful in my business, which is a social media platform called My Come Up. I also had a Filipino recruitment company that recruited nurses for universities in the UK, which done really well. But I always felt empty. I always felt a void. And I used to feel that money would be the answer or the solution, but it wasn't. And what happened towards the end of it is I ended up going to Uganda, because when we passed away, I'm from Uganda, my family, but I was born in London, and even though I was born here, when I pass away, we have an ancestral ground in Uganda. And when I'm funny, my ex-partner I was with was kind of telling me to go to Uganda. Strangely, it's a topic I don't even like to talk about, death. But anyway, we ended up not being together, and I just jumped on a plane. And went to Uganda for the first time. I had only gone when I was 12 and hadn't moved I hadn't been there for a good 12 years. So when I went there, I remember going back to the graveyard. I had only been to once in 12 years and 17 years, sorry. And I remember a world of emotion balling up inside of me, and then coming back to London and just feeling the connection of realizing, because I had so easily, I had become okay with the idea that because of my hard work, that I made me who I am.
Yeah.
To the extent that I would probably go as far as believing that my mum obviously was one that raised me, but I raised myself. And I think just me going back and hearing stories about him and hearing his vision of coming to London and hearing his stories and his characteristics and just going back to the grave, that brought a level of self-acceptance and a level of balance to me that enabled me to come back and write a book and release it, called Become Your Own Hero Again. And it enabled me to really emotionally let go of the ideology I had of negligence. And ever since then, I began practicing more and more acceptance of experiences and things that I have previously had the philosophy of out of sight, out of mind. And now I tend to always try to figure out and feel out things that I'm negligent about and trying to occupy myself with, because I've seen the power of reflecting and actually addressing and confronting, as well as accepting them. And that's how I personally found things such as Stoicism and teachings of this, because I think a lot of the time we're looking for the technical way to do things, but not the emotional. And I genuinely feel like emotionally,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Leonard. I mean, it's very, very brave of you, I think, to share also the story. And I think there's another characteristic, if I may, because I think you kind of share something which is very vulnerable, and I think vulnerability is commonly often seen as a weakness, while I think it's probably an extremely powerful strength. And I think we can only progress if we share, and that's the only way we can grow, or you can exchange how you feel, and maybe someone can help you or can better together onwards. So yeah, very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the platform, and it was a real pleasure.
Thank you.